Hello and welcome to Farming, the Long View. Farming decisions don't just happen in isolation, they're shaped by prices, weather and policy. And often they're shaped by what didn't go to plan last year. Recently, AMTEC has released a report looking at machinery trends heading into 2026. It's not based on forecasts or theory, but it's based on hundreds of on-farm conversations and real buying behaviour. We'll put a link to that report in the description. But today I'm joined by Ross Ellis, who spends his day speaking to farmers about machinery decisions, and Tristan Ellis, who is responsible for sourcing machinery at AMTEC, and he sees firsthand what holds value and what doesn't. So let's start with the mood out on the farms. Ross, when you think of the last 6-12 months, how would you describe the mood amongst farmers right now? Are they still investing, or?
It's a good question. I guess from our game here with selling second-hand machinery, we're in touch with a lot of different farmers up and down the country, different areas, different plans ahead, I guess, different age brackets. But from the conversations I've been having, I'd say especially in the last 6 months, I would say there's a more of a positive approach to the farming game. It has been difficult for the last 2 years. We're not shying away from that at all. And when the farmers are having a difficult period, then it reflects on how we find business demand. But I would say definitely sort of the back half of last year, they had a very encouraging window to get the drilling done, which we found that an encouraging end to the year, and I think the farmers have found that positive as we've gone through winter. I mean, you'd know, both of you, but looking around, the crops are looking very good. We've had some wet couple of months, but I guess we're hoping now that it will dry up. But I guess from when they phoned back sort of a year, 18 months ago, there was a lot of doom and gloom about various incentives and things that have been taken away from them and the price of wheat. I guess they're probably coming to terms now that it's not going to change too fast. So we've got to be working on what else we can do, or being slightly more selective on what kit we're buying, how we're working it. Would you say, Tris?
Yeah, you've got, prices aren't very good, are they? And farmers had a pretty tough time on that regard, and also with government regulations changing, but then they got a little bit of relief through all their hard work on that, didn't they? With the inheritance tax thing, that's probably, I think we've seen that come through in the conversations. It's sort of lifted a weight partly off some of their minds, and probably helped them think again more about investing in the farm. And then probably from our angle, we see more of this in new machinery dealers, and that we're seeing farmers turn to second hand, aren't we? Because the price of new just doesn't stack up for them at the moment, or things like that. But yeah, I'd say that's probably why we would also view the last 6 months as quite positive, because farmers are wanting to engage with us more about buying machinery.
It's good. I think we've appreciated actually some new customers coming on board as well, haven't we, from that fact, because we've got those out there that would tend to have bought new over the years, but as you mentioned, they've been more selective. They've had to cut costs and look at ways they can save. So we've been very fortunate to have some of those farmers, those bigger operators, come on board.
Yeah, that's one of the things actually I noticed in the report we did back in the last year. But it wasn't that people are exactly stopping the investment. You still got to invest to keep going, but it's just being more selective and looking at what works, doesn't it? So what sort of things are people thinking about then, Tris, when they are buying a machine? Like you're saying, obviously, if new is expensive, do we look at good second hand? And when they're doing that, is it just what fits, or is there certain things they consider about a machine more important than others?
Yeah, so I'd say we've seen, if you look down, we keep like a wanted list. So farmers that phone in, or we're phoning, doing proactive calling here to our customer database, and visits as well. We have a couple of guys on the road going around farms, and we build up this wanted list of things they're looking for in the coming weeks or months, or years, and we kind of measure our business going forward by that sort of feed. That's the start of our pipeline, as it were, and that's never been as big as it is now, and I think that's because farmers are going second hand, but because of the price of new, maybe, and other. But you're getting farmers phone up, I know, bigger operators that would never have normally considered buying second hand, and they want a sort of 2 or 3 year old top down 5 or 6, 7 metre, that type of machinery. And just on, like, we're seeing ploughing's like come back big time, hasn't it, Ross?
Very much so. Yeah.
So like we're almost hitting the sort of figures that, in terms of ploughs sold annually, that our dads used to sort of tell us about. So that's making a comeback, and then also that minimum tillage style, like top down, your Horse Tirano 4MT, your Coon Performer, all those sort of disc tines, disc packer machines, they've been really high demand, as seen by the prices they're fetching in sales and things like that. But people don't want to pay. There's farmers that are saying they don't really want to pay 100 grand for one when they could possibly get one for 70. That type of, they sort of want something in that bracket.
Yeah, so that becomes a challenge for you to source them, I suppose, because if they're wanting something recent, the sort of pool of machinery to pull on isn't.
The other thing, yeah, that's right. And then you've got people like the livestock industry. We're very thankful for that, because especially in this area, you've got a lot of mixed farms, and some of the livestock has done quite well. Whether it's hit its peak now, I don't know, but I know milk's gone back down, but like beef and things like that, those farmers have done quite well, and we've had farmers that typically contracted the work out, they've suddenly decided they're going to take it back in-house, so they've been buying machinery.
So growing their own feed and that, you mean, for the...
Yeah. Yeah, so you've got all those dynamics changing, and I guess, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it is. And the other thing that I think cropped up when we had this discussion was around the fact that people are looking at doing, obviously because of, especially with arable, as we've mentioned, prices being very low and margins being very tight, so looking at contracting other work. I noticed I think you mentioned the wanted list. I think the wanted list has probably got sort of more diggers on it than it's ever had. Do you think, are we seeing that people are, especially this time of year, looking to do something else to keep the money coming in? Or?
Yeah, I was speaking to the farmer yesterday. He's started doing tree work. Yeah, farmers have had to start branching out, diversifying more.
Yeah.
But really, the core business still is the farm, and they know that they need to, if they're going to continue doing that. I mean, you're only picking these things up from talking to them, but so I'm not trying to consult here. I'm just feeding back information we've had, but they know that they've got to improve the core business. They've got to improve efficiencies, but if they're going to continue on just farming, they can't actually afford to do those investments. So they have to diversify to be able to put the money back into being more efficient with the core business, the arable enterprise or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that's good, because I was just thinking, as it came up earlier, but back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I started maybe selling a few machines, it was very much of we acted here very much reactive, and farmers would be phoning up and just buying straight off the website, and sometimes it'd
probably
be quite
the Farmers Weekly in those days, wasn't it?
Often, yeah, and fairly probably impulsive buys, and they needed it like tomorrow or the next week. But I think when we're very fortunate to have customers now that will actually put confidence in us in finding the machines they want, as Tristan you mentioned earlier. But some of these bigger operators, they're looking for maybe a 6 or a 7 metre top down. They're looking forwards to the time they're going to need that. So yeah, potentially if they phone up now, they're looking for the autumn.
One of the things that we've noticed, or I think from the conversations, there's been a lot of, is it just the weather that's brought a lot of time to cultivators back into sort of deeper cultivation back into play, or is it more people have seen a weakness and a need to do some more deeper tillage?
I think, yeah, so I can't remember, I was on some other YouTube video or something, I saw of some farmer talking about the impact of an inch of rain on a square metre. It's like colossal, like what it actually does to the soil. And we've had, apart from last year, I mean, the previous 2-3 years were like real wet autumns, winters, and that had a massive impact on soil structure. I think farmers have realised that, and they understand that anyway, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's come back into play. Also, there's SFI programs, sustainable farming initiatives, all these growing flowers and stuff like that, that sort of eco crops. There's people coming to the end of their 3-year period, or that they're facing that at the end of this year or something, and they're suddenly going, right, they've got this decision which has been made more difficult by all the uncertainty around the future of SFI. Have we suddenly got to start ploughing this back into land production?
Yeah.
And they're weighing up that at the moment, costing that up and trying to strategise around that. But that's also driving a lot of this kit. But then SFI itself is, we've seen a lot of people asking for timed cultivators, and they're putting a seeder on it and then establishing their SFI that way.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if that answers.
I was going to ask about the SFI thing, because obviously with the uncertainty and changes around that, I mean, going back a few years, a lot of people were, especially when it first came out and there wasn't so many restrictions, a lot of people were throwing a lot of land into it, and probably making a decision based on the financial benefit of SFI rather than, well, I don't know if this is fair, but the financial benefit of SFI as opposed to what was best for the future of their land or whatever. Do you think, but with that now being removed, is that changing now? So people are starting to look back and saying, well, hang on, I'm not going to get this support on these projects, so I've now got to look at what's the best crop for me to grow, or like you say, what land do they put back into production? And that's
I think you were talking to me a bit ago about why is there no sort of dominant system within the farming world, and I think that's what it is, because just back on your SFI, when that first 4 years ago, it first came in, we it was a bit of a point where we actually had a lot of machinery being offered to us because they were putting so much of their land into schemes that they weren't going to be needing that. Now, as you mentioned, that some of that is coming to an end, and some of that financial benefit probably isn't seen there now, so they're having to look at what we can do with the land. So we're finding there's extra demand for these other cultivators, other drills, and I think it's very much down to, I mean, I guess some farmers, I've spoken to a good number that use the SFI wisely for areas that they've never got a decent crop out of or never got any yield, but their actual
use it to break or something.
Yeah, they're cropping land as well. They've kept in a rotation, and I mean some of the big players that 8,000-10,000 acres, they'd crop it whatever, because there's money to be there. But it's obviously where the prices are at the moment. It's, as we've said all along this podcast, but they are very much more selective, careful with what they're going for. But I feel from the team here, we're absolutely got their back with that, and we want to help them.
Yeah, okay. And going back to your point, you mentioned large farms there. How have we seen, I mean, I know it's been a trend, is that trend still continuing of consolidation of smaller farms into larger? Are we seeing a growth of larger farms, and how's that affecting trends of kit?
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of land coming up or up for grabs at the moment, isn't there, from what customers are saying to us. Because, yeah, I mean, it's not viable sadly for some to continue, or there's not the wish or desire in the next generation to continue it because they can't see a return on it. So yeah, we're seeing bigger farms get bigger, taking more on, especially I'd say out east.
Yeah, okay.
We kind of sit in the middle here. Tend to see a lot of large landowners to the west who have gone to a lot of SFI, but I think it's down to land, what the land can produce. So it's made more sense to put it into a flower scheme, growing flowers, than it has to try and produce a crop, because your yield averages are so much lower than you got grade 1 land out east. Am I answering the question? Probably not. Sorry,
Yeah.
Joseph.
No, you are. I was thinking
They're
more.
getting bigger, but then other things are driving bigger farmers. Like, I'm just thinking now about maize. We haven't talked about that yet.
No.
But that's been a massive game changer in the last 10 years, hasn't it? The amount of land that's gone into maize for AD plants. And that they are some big operators, those guys that are getting involved with that. And they just seem to keep growing. I heard of another customer earlier this week who's just taken on another 3,000 acres of maize this coming few months. But yeah,
Comes back
that's
to what
changed.
crops are paying the money, I suppose.
Yeah, that's changed a lot. I mean, I said, so how much is 3,000 acres of maize? And he said it's another 10 days work
Wow.
for the year.
So it's not that labour intensive, really.
No,
is it?
so it's all this the advancement in farm machinery has meant that they can take these bigger acreages on. But what about direct drilling and that whole thing, Ross? What do you say we've seen with that? Just what you were saying about the no single dominant system, but we saw a massive turn to that, didn't we? Probably 2015.
Yeah, I was going to say 10 years ago.
And that still is a huge part, isn't it? But there's people actually have gone down that route, got a bit disillusioned and come away from it as well, do you think?
Yeah, and I think from our perspective here, we have to be, as in we have a good selection of all types of drills, don't we? So if I know I sometimes get questions, so what would you do if you were in my boots, or what where is the trend going? Well, difficult to say, because as you say, there's some that have tried it for 3 or 4 years, 5 years, and they're actually turning around now and saying, well, back to the older, maybe like you said earlier, ploughs, that type of thing, that is coming back. And we found a very much of an increase in demand in the last couple of years on ploughs. I mean, from Cavell and Lemkin, even the Dow's wells, we can't actually get enough of them, can we?
Yeah, you've got some farmers that and you sort of think they're lucky enough to be able to do it. They've got a drill for every
That's always the nice scenario, isn't it? Yeah.
Because the weather affects so much of this as well, doesn't it? But you'll go in their shed and they've got disc drill, direct drill, tine drill. They're covered. Obviously, that's not everyone's case, but I think that's been a massive player, isn't it? Just weather conditions and having to go in such a short window, being prepared to go.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said earlier, Tristan, that's always the case with us, isn't it? We'd never. I mean, yes, okay, we'd have a discussion about somebody's best solution, but we'd never tell somebody how to farm. It's always a case of what works best for them, and then we've hopefully got the machine that fits that scenario. But I think what you say is interesting. It's not even, you can't even nail it down to a particular area or anything. You can have neighbouring farms, can't you? And one guy will still be plowing, and the other guy will have gone completely to a direct drilling. It's just what works for people and what they get on with, and how they've decided to farm their farm, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we, I guess, from our angle as well, we're having conversations every day, but sometimes we'll part exchange machines in because they want to go down a certain route, but we're always very much open to, I often say to them, look, in a year's time, 18 months down the road, if it isn't working for you, we're having such a throughput of 1300, 1400 machines through in a year, we'd look at swapping back, or we might have another machine that you're better suited, we'd buy it back. And at the end of the day, we're here to help. It's just a team, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah, and it's just, you've got to keep trying different things and like Tristan says, obviously the weather is such a massive impact all the time, and that will hugely impact what's going on. You mentioned the drilling season at the end of last year. Will you compare that to the drilling season at the end of 24? They were completely different, and you could use a completely different machine to get your crop in. So I mean, I guess that's always going to be the biggest impact on farming. is going to be that weather, isn't it?
Yeah, but also we mustn't forget that we're dealing with commodity product, which has become more and more of just a global price.
Yeah.
Like you talk to older farmers this past year after this drought we've had, and they said the thing is with the drought, and you know we all go, everything's measured by 1976, isn't it? But after that, they had poor crops, but price reflected the fact that it was poor crops.
Yeah.
This last year, poor crops, but global wheat stocks are plentiful, and so the price hasn't reflected the fact that we've had a bad turn in the weather. So there's that whole global side. And like I was talking to a customer came across 2 days ago from Romania, and I picked him up from the station. We were driving back up to the yard, and he was asking the price of land around here, and I said it's £10,000 an acre, which is £25,000 a hectare.
Okay.
Roughly, give or take 8 if it's not really in demand, 12 if it's. And he just couldn't believe it. He said we're on grade 1 land, and you can buy it for €7,000 an acre, a hectare. Sorry, €7,000 a hectare. So there's all that to compete with as well.
Exactly.
So,
and their inputs are probably lower, and certainly labour's lower, and all that sort of thing.
So then farmers across here, what do you do? One of the things you can do is become more efficient with what you've got, I guess, is the thought process. So do you go to wider drill or a faster drill or that type of, do less passes, burn less diesel,
reduce inputs, all that sort of thing.
And I think that's where it goes back to the increase in demand for second hand, because they're not buying a new drill that's 150 grand and just having that one.
Yeah.
You might be having 4 drills at 30 grand or whatever, and you've got the whatever scenario you're hit with, you do have a drill you can crack on in that short window.
Yeah.
Well, this probably answers my question. The question I always like to finish with is, because we're talking about the long-term view of farming here, is well, we'll start with you, Ross, but what decision, machinery decision, do you think people need to think about with that long-term goal in mind? You know, if you're thinking about farming not just tomorrow, but 5-10 years time. I know it's difficult to look in the crystal ball and come up with an answer, but where do you see the machinery decisions going? Is it just further of what we've got, or are we?
Yeah, I think. Well, just as you were saying, I was just thinking over the last 15 years of selling. I mean, still selling similar machines today than I was 15 years ago. But I think it's very much, as was mentioned earlier, very much weather related. But looking ahead, I think there is more of a selection process on what they want to be choosing going forward. That's going to take them to the next level. But we have got to be practical about it. That if the price of or the commodity price of wheat doesn't change, they've got to be there. I mean, at the end of the day, I was talking to a few end of last year. He said, "Well, prices where they are, but we're not going to stop. We're going to be farming. My father's been farming. My grandfather's been farming. We'll continue to do so." So I guess from our angle, it's from us to be here to help when they need a machine and help source it where we can.
If they want to make changes for a particular season, then I suppose it's just making that as easy as possible, isn't it?
And also, we haven't really mentioned hire in this either, but I think that's where we found that benefit in the last few years, that we've been able to help some of our good customers, help all of our customers. If there is a window of opportunity that comes up, they need to hire a power harrow or hire a time drill, we're here to help fulfil that.
What do you reckon then, Tristan, from machinery you've seen over the last 15 years, what's the next 15 years look like?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with what Ross has said. It's interesting. I find it fascinating seeing all these like robotics and all that drone applications, and then you sort of look at the more radical stuff, like and trying to grow wheat in buildings in the middle of cities and stuff like that. That you think, oh, that'll never happen, but you think of the speed of how the world is changing. How can, I don't know, you have to look at that and think, is that going to actually become more of a reality than we give it credit for?
Yeah, it's true. I think probably we've probably looked at farming industry from a technology point of view, and always thought, like, I go back a few years, always thought it was a bit behind, but now, I mean, in the last few years, technology's come on leaps and bounds, and it only takes it to become, mainstream and affordable, and suddenly it can start to be put into an everyday situation.
Yeah, and then you've got, which I don't think we see enough evidence of it being a concern, which worries me a little bit. Let's not get too political. But you've got the whole unsettlement amongst the nations, and food security becomes a massive part of national security. It should be anyway.
Yeah.
But in the case of a massive crisis, which we all hope and pray doesn't happen, but you see what's going on and the risks there are at play in the world at the moment, and you think, if that came about, it was suddenly farming becomes of huge importance again in this country, doesn't it? And that would change everything, would change a lot of things. But in terms of machinery, you'd just be using your current sort of methods.
Absolutely, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah,
because it'd work.
Yeah,
It'd stack up.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, no, it's good to have a chat, and obviously we're having a few conversations with lots of different people, and I'm sure your point about food security will come up in some of the conversations, but it is a little bit impossible to give a definitive answer of what happens in the next few years. But one thing we can be sure of, and as you mentioned it earlier, is that farming's not stopping. We still need to eat, and it's not standing still. It's still one of the oldest and most noble professions. So we're not going to, people are still going to be farming. People are still going to need machinery. People are going to still need to know what works. So it's just a case of the investment being more thoughtful, more considered, and potentially less opportunity to just stockpile old machines for just in case situations. So thank you for your input today, folks, and that brings us to the end of this episode.